Hi everyone, I'm Courtney and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm a nutritionist and I specialize in the areas of juice cleansing, vegan nutrition, and healing overeating. And this video is going to be about me sharing where I currently am with the topics of food addiction and body image. And I will have probably a series of videos over time where I update everybody on where I am. And the intention, hopefully, this is a bit of an experiment, but the intention is that potentially by me being transparent about where I am now, that might help other people, and that if I can work through some of this stuff over time, then it will also potentially help other people to maybe experiment with some of the same things emotionally as myself in order to heal their own food addiction. I talk a lot about, when I talk about my own personal experience with healing food addiction, I talk about it a lot in past tense. So I talk about what I did do and what I did feel and how I did go about it. And I don't so much talk about where it is now, currently. Part of the reason I don't as much talk about now as I did before is because my behavior now is not nearly as severe as my behavior before. And so, I've healed a lot of my behavior with food, and I know that it's never going to revert back to what it was, and I've lost a lot of the weight, and I know that I'm never going to gain that much back. And so, the bulk of that sort of is in the past, I suppose, is how you could say it. But on the other hand, it kind of occurred to me that I don't really talk about how it is now. And I think part of that is because I'm not sure whether it's helpful for people to know where it is now. I kind of think maybe it's better to wait till I've dealt with something fully or kind of in retrospect where I can say, this worked, I did it, here's how I did it. And then I feel like that might be more helpful because I don't want it to, my personal sharing to be kind of like you watching a reality show about someone's life that isn't helpful for you at all. But then on the other hand, I thought, I often appreciate when people are transparent. And so maybe it'll help other people if I am as well. And also, just maybe that long term will help something. And also because I am kind of talking about healing food addiction, in this case, in more real time, like as it is now, maybe that'll be just a different angle that might be helpful. So we'll see. It's an experiment. And so I wanted to share where I currently am with two different areas. One is with my actual behavior with food, what I do with food from an emotional eating perspective, and then also where I currently am with the topic of body image and my emotions towards my body and things like that. And that is an area that I've got a lot of healing to do. So we'll see. But when it comes to how I eat, where I am now is I'm all vegan. I've been vegan for many years, and that's not something that I struggle with. But within being vegan, I still have a lot of dependence on vegan treats and on treats. That's my whole life. It's always been about treats, really. So cookies, cake, chocolates, muffins, basically baked sweet treats is the thing. I love healthy food. I have no problem with that. I love salads. I love vegetables. I know how to make really good stuff. So I love all that. I don't struggle to eat healthy for the majority of what I eat. But for me, when I want to suppress emotions, when I want to be comforted emotionally, when I want to take that edge off, it's about the treats. And because of that, my weight does still fluctuate a bit too. So between, say, where I might be at the end of a juice cleanse to times when I'm more heavily relying on food emotionally, could be fluctuating maybe as much as 9 pounds, maybe 10. at times, and this is just within the last like year or two that I'm talking. If I'm a bit more stable, it might only fluctuate a couple of pounds. But I still fluctuate because of that reliance on food. And I also, so another thing I haven't talked about tons on this channel, but I think it links in as long as I'm sharing about this, is that I feel like my food addictions have also always been linked in with the depression and anxiety that I've had in my life. So when I was 17, I was diagnosed with severe depression, and I haven't been to a psychiatrist since then. My personal feeling is that I am definitely not nearly as depressed as I used to be. And now it kind of comes in waves at different times, depending on what I'm avoiding in my life or how I'm feeling emotionally, how I'm not feeling emotionally in the sense of suppression. But I have times when I have phases where, I go through a depressive or anxiety, because it's also anxiety, where I go through an anxious or depressive cycle, like spiral, a phase of maybe, it could be a day or a couple of days, where I heavily rely on food, where I do have days that are really dark for me emotionally. They are very dark, and in that place, I feel that the treats get me through, and they are the best part of that day, and I feel that I need them. All of these things I think are false beliefs based on the healing of food addiction that I've done already, but I have an attitude towards what is left of addictive behavior with food that I shouldn't have to give it up. I don't want to, and I need it. I need it. I should get it, and that's kind of it. By the way, the goal is not to not want dessert or to never have sugar. It's just that I can feel in me that I am reliant on it still. So I would like to at some point, well, I say I would like to, I don't know if I would actually like to, because I'd probably be doing it, but the idea would be that I would break some of that, more, that reliance, and that thing I can feel in me where there's still, I think, a lot underneath that insistence on being able to keep the coping that I do with food still. So that's where I'm at with that. With body image, this is something that I feel like I probably need coaching myself on. I have always had very strong body image issues. For my whole life, I have been extremely preoccupied about my appearance, particularly when it comes to my body size. And that is something that I still very much have. So as an example of that, and this is something I'm trying to challenge now, ever since I started this YouTube channel, I have had a little rule with myself that I won't record a video unless I'm within 2 to 3 pounds of my ideal weight. And if I'm more than that, even 5, I won't record the video. And I realize that illustrates some pretty intense feelings that I have, but that's the truth. I have, when I was in high school, most of my life, my problem has been binge eating and being overweight. But for a short period of time in high school, I had anorexia, and I was actually diagnosed with it. And that was about much more so than I have it now. My body image stuff has actually relaxed a lot compared to then, but I believe that happened at that time because I had such a strong feeling that if I was not as thin as possible, I was not beautiful, I was not good enough, and that anything other than what I can now see were my parents' ideal body for a woman, anything other than that was bad, was undesirable. And that, I believe, is what led to behavior where I was so obsessed. When I was anorexic, I would weigh myself 12 times a day, 10 times a day. Wasn't even logical, but I would weigh myself after I ate, before I ate, like every factor, because, you know, and I was terrified to gain weight, terrified, even a small amount of like terrified. Now the fact that I fluctuate, like, it does freak me out, but I can cope with it, like mostly. But that back then, my goodness, it was the end of the world, is how it felt. I grew up in a family that was very appearance oriented. And I feel like I also grew up in a time where culturally the idea of an attractive body type was more specific. So there wasn't as many kinds of body types that were considered attractive or beautiful the way that I feel like it is now. And so I grew up with a mom who was also very hyper focused on her body image, and she felt that literally as thin as possible as you could get was the most attractive. She felt that way towards herself, towards other women, and projected that on me as well. My dad kind of had that preference for a woman's body type also, and I also grew up in, you know, I think a cultural time, like I said, where that was the case. And it's still something I really have a hard time with. I realize now, and I have worked to some extent on the fact that I associate my worth and my feeling of whether I'm good enough, like as a soul, with the size of my body. And that is something I still have work to do on. And I believe that is but I believe that's a common thing for a lot of people, is that association with worth and what their body looks like. I don't believe that there's anything wrong with having a preference necessarily, by the way. For example, the preference that I have for my body size, according to some people, might be not thin enough still. And according to other people, might be too thin. You know, I can't sort of please everyone. But I do know an area where I have more preference and where I feel more comfortable working out and, you know, wearing clothing. And I don't necessarily think that anybody who has a preference for their body size or shape, I don't think that's something necessarily to be ashamed of. I think the problem is that when we cross over from preference into having these very intense emotional associations with the size of our body, which I still have. And so I struggle with my body a lot still. I struggle with feelings of dislike and hatred a lot. And it throws me off a lot. It dismays me a lot. Better than it used to be for sure, but it's still there. And my feeling is that I've got more emotions to feel through about the projections from my parents and the associations I have based on my relationship with them. I think that will shift it. I also think that grieving the fears that I have of what will happen if I am not a certain size will potentially also help. And you know, we'll see how that goes. But I think the body image stuff is something that would be good to talk more about that. So if you all have found this helpful at all, I'd love to know, because I just love to know, whether it's helpful or not for you guys to hear me just talk about kind of where I'm at, even though I don't have strong advice because there are things I still have to work through myself. All right, but thank you for listening, and I will let you know when I've got an update or, something more to say about what I'm discovering as I work through this issue in real time. All right, I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.